entire life.
Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me in the studio is the beautiful, ever radiant birthday girl, Ro Clausen.
Yay! I am so excited to be here on my birthday, which is kind of crazy. And as the intro was playing, and it's like, significant pieces of our life, I'm like, oh, it's like the perfect time to reflect on your life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot to celebrate today. As you can see, we're celebrating. We're here in the studio. Yes, we're going to be talking about Ro's birthday. Opportunity for those who are live with us today to ask some questions. So, where do you want to kick it off today? It's your birthday. You're driving.
I don't know. I want to kick it back to you. I just want to sit in the hot seat and answer the questions.
Okay. Well, how about this? Because, earlier we were talking about birthday celebrations and we were talking in regards to like how we celebrate these days, right? Everything we do is, revolves around health, wellness. So our celebrations, I'm going to say, are maybe a little bit outside the norm. And as we were talking about this, like how we choose to celebrate, thought it was a good time for us to maybe highlight some of those things because we don't necessarily talk about those. Whenever we talk about Gritability, we're always talking about the challenges and the tough stuff, and we don't talk about the celebrations, right? The wins.
Yeah.
And how we choose to celebrate. Because I'll start with saying that I know in my past, my celebrations often got me in a bit of trouble, right? Like I did not know how to celebrate. As with everything I do in life, I take it as far as I possibly can. I push the limits. And when it's unhealthy things that you're doing, like for me, celebrations was drinking, there was drugs, it was partying, and it would go on for days, right? And, maybe at a time in my life, like there were other people that encouraged that, like that was somewhat normal. And you and I have talked about that. Our lives have changed dramatically. The way that we celebrate now is very, very different. So part of that is, we're representing today a decision to live sober, healthy, active lives, what that means, a little bit different when I was younger, and I'm a bit younger, a lot younger than you, Ro.
A ton.
A lot younger.
No, I'm younger.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whoa.
Yeah. You're a lot younger than me. I'm the elder in this relationship.
Way elder.
I got a much younger wifey here, lucky me. And, some of those things that when we were younger, like the science wasn't there. We didn't kind of like smoking came out when we were younger. They're like, hey, it's unhealthy. You probably shouldn't do this, but we didn't really know the effects of it. And drinking, the same thing. Like we didn't know all of the cognitive decline contributing to all sorts of, as you age, mental deterioration, physical deterioration, all these negative things that, for us, we focus on that because we're about health and wellness, but we don't ever talk about the other side. And for celebrations, people generally talk about eating unhealthy and drinking a lot, right? So where does that leave us?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about celebrations in the past, it's twofold for me, right? So if I was celebrating something like a win, like when I used to compete in fitness and I won the jerseys, I never allowed myself to celebrate that, which I think is equally as unhealthy. Well, maybe not equally, but that's unhealthy as well, right? I remember literally coming off the stage of the jerseys when I won and people were like, oh my God, congratulations. And I'm like, shh, I have a lot of stuff I have to focus on. They told me I have to get better at this and I have to get my delts bigger and my legs leaner, whatever it was, right? So there's that. And then also celebrations like holidays and birthdays I'm Italian. We celebrate everything, like waking up in the morning with food. So there's always that. And then, yeah, I mean, I would get wasted. That was what I would plan to do at every holiday, every birthday. I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I wasn't addicted per se, but I drank to get wasted at the end of the day. And that's what I did on my birthday. And, I think the year before or the year you came home, because you were released about 2 or 3 weeks after my birthday, actually got the news that your sentence was vacated as I was getting on my birthday, as I was getting ready to go out that night to go to dinner and drink wine. But I think I went out 6 different times with 6 different groups of people for my birthday that year. And every time I went out, I mean, I got like shit faced. And then I would have to spend 3 or 4 days recovering from my birthday celebrations. So yeah, we do choose to celebrate very differently. And even tonight when we were getting ready to come here, you're like, I don't know what, we usually like dress nicer, and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. And I was like, go just like this, because I think that speaks to what we're doing tonight to celebrate. Like, I would rather be nowhere else than at home, either ordering in, celebrating with you and CJ. And I think that's going to be amazing. Like, we thought about maybe going out, but Friday night in Vegas, it's kind of hard to get a reservation. So I will be equally as comfortable just laying on the couch and hanging out with you.
Love it, because we are so on the same page with that. And just to clarify, when you talk about us going out, we're talking about like going out to dinner.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
everybody assumes you guys are in Vegas. Like, that's the clubs and even the daytime pool parties, like 24 hours a day. There are parties going on around here, and people just drinking to complete excess to where they're a mess.
And I mean, I was the girl dancing on the tabletops. I lived my life and I had fun. And I mean, in my 20s, in my mid to late 30s, maybe I should have slowed down a little bit, but I don't knock that. Like, I'm glad I did that when I did, but to me, like, that's just not fun anymore.
Well put. Well, I would say, for me, looking back, I made the decision while I was in prison. And for anybody that's followed along with when we talk about prison, pretty much you can have or do almost anything in prison, right? There's plenty of drugs, there's plenty of alcohol, all of those things exist. And man, for the first couple of years there, yeah, I started exploring my passion for fitness, but I was still drinking, I was still smoking, I was still doing a bunch of negative things. And it wasn't until, very vividly recall, it was 2005, my final appeal, I almost missed a deadline because I was drinking and driving, so to speak, in prison. Meaning I had quite a few drinks, was out on the yard, got picked up, breathalyzed, sent directly to the hole, almost didn't get a chance to file my final appeal.
They actually breathalyze you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
They walk around the yard with breathalyzers.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yep. So when that happened, it was like, damn, like, how many times is this going to happen where, like, isn't this a sign? Like, you keep putting yourself in this situation. And I've had numerous driving while intoxicated charges throughout my youth where I lost my license. Like, for me, it doesn't work. I don't do anything in moderation. So that was my first sign. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take an extreme stance here and just quit altogether. I quit everything. I quit smoking. I quit drinking. I quit drugs, all of it, 2005. Do I remember the exact date? No, not even important. I know for some people that sobriety date is. For me, it's not. I just made a decision and stood by it. And I'm grateful that as the years passed, it became easier in the sense of I became more comfortable with saying, this is who I am. And it's not like loudly proclaiming like, hey, I'm sober and this is what I am. It's me just saying, like, when we're out, like, hey, I don't drink. And I'm cool with that. Like, that's my response. I try not to make other people feel uncomfortable. And I've learned I just choose to order different drinks. Let me get a club soda and lime. So it almost looks like I have something of a drink. And this is what I choose. And shout out to Joe Rogan's Alpha Brain. I choose the healthy, right? Like this is what I want. Focused on memory and focus. Like I want the things that are going to make me feel good. I don't ever want to feel hungover and feel like, oh, I did that again. So in choosing to live that way, I've very clearly drawn a line and I let the people around me know this is my choice. Now, where I do have an issue is, you remember when we first got out here and we went out to
I
dinner?
know. Yes, I know what you're going to
We
talk
went out
about.
to dinner with basically the people responsible for us being out here. And as we're sitting there, first thing they do, waiter comes up and says, can I get you all anything to drink? And this guy orders a drink and looks at me and is like, what do you want to drink?
Well, explain the background. Like he's supposed to be.
He's supposed to be a lot of things. And sobriety is at the top of that list for how he promotes himself. So I'm like, wait, what? I was like, okay, so you're a little bit different when you're out and there aren't other people around. And he was looking at me like, how are you going to respond? Do you want a drink? And I'm fresh out, right? And you would think this is a person who potentially has some influence over me, over us, the position that we're in. And I remember feeling uncomfortable. And it was a long time since I had felt that way. But I also, after the fact, felt really good about it because I'm like, man,
Well,
was that a test?
It probably was. And I think the reason you felt so uncomfortable, it wasn't just some random person at the bar offering you a drink. It was somebody you held in very high regard. And then you probably felt almost like, am I obligated to, not that you were, but that's a hard situation to be in when it's somebody that, you hold in a high regard and you're out here because of him and you're working for him. And it was just an awkward situation. I vividly remember the first time you told me you didn't want to drink anymore, and it was while you were still in prison. And we used to talk about like, oh, I can't wait to get out. You fantasize about things and, nights when it's cold in the fireplace and takeout and a bottle of wine, right? Because wine was my thing. And then you told me you didn't want to drink anymore. And I remember being like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I don't know if I want to do that, right? And I really had to think about it. And I'm like, well, I've given up alcohol for years, months at a time before when I was competing in fitness. And it was more a situation like you were saying, like that's when I was still young. I was in my mid-20s when I started competing. So I would go out to the bars. I just wouldn't drink. And I remember this time specifically, I'm at the Jersey Shore at Bar A. And this guy's like, let me buy you a drink. And I was like, oh, I'm not drinking right now. And he was like, oh, come on. And I was like, no, I compete in fitness. I'm on a diet. I can't. He was like, oh, it's just once, right? And then I literally tried every excuse because I'm feeling bad now, right? To not like, oh, this and that. And then finally I was like, oh, I'm in AA. Literally, that's what I said. And he's like, oh, but it's just one shot. And I thought to myself, oh my God. And still to this day, I'm that girl that I find it very awkward I guess because drinking was such a part of my life, my family. Like I grew up with wine on the table. My dad drinks wine every night. My dad makes homemade wine. So I find myself, it's still awkward and uncomfortable. And I don't think been in a situation since we've been out here most of the time, I was either pregnant or breastfeeding. So that was just my go-to, right? But now that I'm not pregnant or breastfeeding, I shouldn't care. But for some reason, I feel like I don't want to make the person offering or drinking uncomfortable. I know that's stupid and crazy. And it's not going to cause me to have a drink because we decided together that that's something that we don't want to do because we live a healthy life. And it's something that, it's unhealthy, first of all, and it opens doors to other unhealthy things to creep back in. Because don't tell me I wasn't at the diner eating cheese fries and gravy disco fries to all my Jersey people after a long night out drinking. So it's just, we choose not to do that. And I shouldn't have to explain that to somebody, but I always feel a weird guilt. Isn't that strange? Or maybe not?
No, part of that's your personality. You very much, it's in everything you do, you want other people to feel comfortable. It's in the way that you prepare. Like if someone's coming over, there's a spread.
We just talked about this on a podcast
right?
not long ago. Yes.
Right? So you find other ways to make people feel comfortable, to make people feel at ease. So when you can tell someone's not comfortable with your response, that triggers something in you to feel uncomfortable. And it's just becoming, I guess, more at ease with that over time. And it does get easier. And I will say this, I have seen the influence that we have had on others. You know, a lot of times it takes seeing someone else make that decision or doing something to give someone else the courage to say, oh, well, they did it. Like, why don't I give it, at least give it a shot and try and do that myself? And I'll say with leadership, for me, going into that, like I knew that everyone who was a part of this group, that they drank a lot. Like many of the social events were literally around drinking. So going in there with a strategy like, how am I going to address this, man? If everybody else is drinking a lot, what am I going to do?
Were you finished? Good, keep going.
I was just going to say that what I found over the course of that year was there were a lot of other people who over time chose to make similar decisions to say, you know what, I'm going to try this. First of the year, I know that there was a lot of people that did the, what is it, Sober January or Sober